My guest today is Kody Thompson. He has gone from being a youth pastor in regional Victoria to being a founder and leader of multiple seven-figure businesses. This guy's story is wild. We talk a lot about the journey of a founder and what that looks like and how the founder needs to change their role and their place in the business as it scales. We also talk about some really relatable challenges and issues that plague nearly every business owner or manager. So I know you're going to love it. They're right at the end, so make sure you stick around. Let's take it away. Kody, thanks so much for joining me in the virtual studio. You are our first virtual guest. How about that?
Pretty cool, man. I hope I look well framed and nice on,
Totally.
on your camera.
Yeah, 100%. Kody, you have an absolute monstrous amount of things that we could talk about, and I'm really excited to dig into how you've grown in business, what businesses you've been involved with, and what you're doing now, because you're making a pretty huge impact, and it's pretty wild. So how about we just start at the start? Actually, we'll start with what you're currently doing now. So lay out your main gig right now, what it looks like, the scale, purpose, what it is.
Yeah, so we help companies build teams in the Philippines. I've been building teams there for the last 10 years, and over the last 2 years, we've helped place over 200 staff with our over 800 staff with our clients in the Philippines. Some of those teams up to 200 staff in some of those particular teams that we've built. And so, yeah, that's basically what we're doing right now. We have 4 sites, 4 building sites that we have. So we've got about 1,000 or 1,100 desks across those 4 sites. And our goal over the next 10 years is to place, over the next 5 years is to place 10,000 staff in the Philippines. So that's our high level goal. And yeah, dude, it's exciting.
That's a lot of staff. I mean, for anyone who manages people, I reckon they've just broken out into an instant sweat. How do you manage? How do you even approach that vision of 10,000 staff? And break the business model down for me a little bit. We're talking about WrkPod here, right?
Correct.
How does the business model work, and how do you set it up for success in that scale of people?
Well, I mean, it didn't start out like that. It's small steps at a time. And then, like when I first, I don't know, we'll probably talk about this later, but when I first started building my web development company over there, I remember not being able to sleep at night when I'd have like 5 or 6 staff, thinking about how I was going to pay them and bring in enough money to pay the staff. And you just and then you figure that out, and then you go to the next level, and then you figure that out. So it's not as if yesterday I just ended up with this many staff that we're looking after. You kind of go through those phases, and then you figure out how to deal with the pressure at each stage, I guess. And a lot of it comes down to building a great team. You couldn't manage that many people by yourself. Like, no one's that good of a leader that they can just single-handedly manage like a large number of people. You have to have amazing people around you, and that's that's my big focus, particularly when you don't live in the country. Like, I'm not in the Philippines every day. I live in New South Wales, so you need to have a team on the ground, and I've been really blessed to have great people that I've come into contact with that share the vision that I have to create opportunities, for Filipinos to get great jobs with, companies here in Australia, New Zealand, the US. And then it makes a massive difference in our clients' lives when they, have the opportunity to scale their businesses faster. So yeah, it's not like it started out like that. Just over time, you figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So how is WrkPod different than your average outsourcing company? Have you got a point of difference that makes it part of your value proposition?
Yeah, I mean, the main difference is when our clients work with us, they hire the staff directly. So most agencies, they call them BPOs, like outsourcing agencies. What they do is they hire the staff for you, and then they essentially rent them to you on a contract. And so the problem is, if Hebron Films hires someone through one of these agencies, and one day you decide to sell your company, none of those staff are employed by you. So there's no value in your workforce because the workforce is employed by somebody else. So your whole business then becomes predicated on the success of this BPO outsourcing agency. And in my opinion, I never want to build my companies like that. So why would I expect my customers to want to build their businesses like that? So what WrkPod does is we help find the talent, and then we help our clients hire them directly, and then they just pay to use our infrastructure. So they pay to have their staff work in one of our serviced offices, and they can build large teams within our infrastructure, but they're not locked into WrkPod. So if we build them up to a point where they sold their company, or they get to a point where they want to build their own office or something like that, then they're not stuck with WrkPod for life. The staff belong to them, and they have the flexibility to grow their business the way they want to without being forced to have their staff employed by us.
Wow, that's amazing. So you're pretty much a recruitment company and a co-working space business.
Correct.
Which makes it a pretty good business model for you, because you're not carrying the weight of that overhead of staff costs, right? So
that's right.
Your clients pay their staff directly rather than
correct.
You. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So we do have some clients, some larger clients still would prefer us to hire the staff on their behalf. So we do have that model available. Like larger corporate clients, they don't want to deal with any problems, and in some cases, for insurance purposes, they don't want to hire the staff direct. They want you to hire the staff, and then you're the one legally responsible for all the HR stuff like that. So in some cases, that's what they want. But we only have about 200 staff that are employed by us, and then the rest of the 600 odd staff are employed directly by our clients. And so, like you said, we're not responsible for all of the stuff that goes along with hiring people. Yeah.
Which can be fairly immense.
Yes.
Fairly immense. Tell me about your infrastructure, because 800 people, that's not a small number of people that's a big co-working space. Are you spread out across a few different areas in the Philippines, or have you got one ginormous headquarters?
Yeah, our biggest facility has about 800 desks in it.
Oh, wow.
And then we just released, it's a 2-story facility. There's about 450 desks on each floor. We just released one of the floors only recently in the last couple of months. So that's one facility. Then we have, we call that WrkPod HQ. That's our main facility. Then we have a facility in the city. So we're in a place called Dumaguete in the Philippines. And then we've got a place in the city called WrkPod Downtown that has 120 desks or something. And then just out of the city, we took over a university campus, which will eventually have space for about 650-ish. But right now, we're renovating that stage by stage. So right now, it's got about 150 desks, something around that number. But that'll be a cool facility. We call that WrkPod Campus. It's got its own basketball court, its own soccer field. We're putting we're putting a cinema in for the staff so they can watch movies for free.
Wow!
It's got a gym going in as well, so that's a really cool facility because it's, like I said, an old university campus. We've been able to take over all of the infrastructure that was there and turn it into a giant co-working space.
Wow! So I can hear it in a few of the things that you're saying that you're doing, and in what I already understand about WrkPod. But why? What drives the focus on these employee kind of well-being things? What are you trying to achieve with WrkPod, and what is your values when it comes to staffing?
Well, it's it's life transformation. I mean, that's why I do what I do. I guess I want to help people to achieve their potential, and we want to look after people. And there's a lot of people in my life who've done things for me that they didn't have to do. Over the years, helped me out, been there for me, gave me opportunities when they didn't have to. So that, drives me to do the same for others. So that's part of it. And then obviously, also from a business standpoint, if you look after your staff well, like if we create an environment where staff love coming to work, that's good for our customers as well. Because if our customers hire staff through us and the staff love working from our facilities, that's just good business as well. So it's the right thing to do, but it's also good business because it means the staff will stay longer with our clients. Our clients will be more connected to WrkPod. They won't want to take their staff out of our facilities if their staff love working there. Yep. So it's a bit of both. It's it's my personal values, but also I think it's a smart business decision as well to create an environment where staff love coming to work.
Yeah, I love that. And what does your leadership team look like? We talked a little bit about, it's not possible to manage that amount of people. Like, what's your org structure that enables you to, assuming that you still have kind of tabs on and connection with, rather than tabs on, but connection with a lot of the staff that are working in your facility, rather than just saying, hey, hey, Bank of Australia, here's 200 staff, off you go. We'll never deal anything with them again. Yeah.
So there's a principle or a framework called EOS, which stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System, and that's I subscribe to. Not completely agree with all of the frameworks that they have, but one of the frameworks that they talk about is an accountability chart. And the way that they break organizations down is you have what they call a visionary leader. So that's usually your CEO. That'd probably be the gifting, say that you have, Caleb, you've got a vision for your business. And then there's what they call an integrator, which is someone you pair with a visionary who basically can put legs on your ideas. And so that's sort of like a general manager type person. I have a general manager named Jong. And then every business really has three areas. There's sales and marketing, so attracting, people to your organization. Then there's a delivery area, which is delivering your product or service. And then there's an admin area, which is like your HR and your finance. So every business, like, doesn't matter what it is, can be broken into those three areas: sales and marketing, delivery, and then admin, which is your finance and HR. Now, you can then split those teams as your company grows. So, for example, you can split your sales and marketing. So you've got like a marketing team that does your lead gen, sales team that converts. So you can break that down. And then how do you deliver your product? In my business, there's two aspects to delivery. You talked about it a moment ago. There's the recruitment, and then there's the co-working space. So we have the initial recruitment team. Then we have like a customer service team that manages the staff that work there and the clients and manages that relationship. And then our admin team's broken now into finance and HR. So there's 6 kind of core departments, but every business starts with those 3 functions. And then depending on what the business is, the functions can slightly change and those teams can be broken down. Another example would be like in my web development business prior, which I sold last year, the delivery team was made up of project managers, web developers, and quality assurance team. So there was, again, there's 3 that the delivery was broken down into 3 teams, but it's still the same overall structure.
Yeah, I love that, and I love how you've broken that down. It's a really great framework, and anyone listening to this is going to be thinking, oh yeah, well, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I can't take credit for it. EOS, there's books like Traction is a great book which talks about that. So yeah, you can check that out. If you just Google EOS, you'll find heaps of information online about it.
I love that. That's so cool. I want to, because we're here and WrkPod is honestly so cool. We're gonna stay here a little bit, and then we're gonna go all the way back to the start.
Yeah.
So what you've been able to achieve some kind of social impact stuff in the Philippines, and I want to kind of ask you a little bit about that and some other wins that you've been able to achieve through WrkPod that have been made you real proud.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about before, just, I guess, my heart to create jobs. So there's that part is, I guess what I love about WrkPod is it feels like philanthropy and commerce like mixed. Like in my previous companies, I had like work to make money, and then I would use some of that money to do good stuff, but they were kind of like disconnected. Like we would build websites and make money from that, and then we would go out and help kids in the schools and stuff. And it was great. We were still like able to help people and all that. But the day-to-day operations didn't feel like I was changing lives. Like building websites is cool, but I didn't feel like I was changing lives. We were helping the business owners and our clients and all that, of course, but it just wasn't the same as like WrkPod. Every day we go to work and we help someone get a job. Like the stories we hear are crazy. Like people who were like, people who get degrees. For example, there's one guy called Julius, and there's a video of him on our website, and he, was in huge amounts of debt. He had people coming to his house. He tried to start his own business, which had failed. He couldn't get a job. He had a kid and a wife to support. And basically he was desperate, and then he gets a job with Aaron and Brendan, at this gym in Melbourne, and it transforms his life. Now he's the team leader for that team, and there's 4 or 5 staff that work underneath Julius, and it completely changed his life. And the stories like that, like over and over again, people that got degrees in, say, chemistry, and then they can't get a job, so they end up working in a call center, working from midnight till 9 a.m. They don't get to see their family. Like they're not living a great life. And then they get a job that's daytime shift. Suddenly they can pick their kids up from school. They're earning twice what they were making working in the call center, and it completely transforms their life. So that aspect of what we do, like we placed 50 staff just last month. And if we think about the impact that will make on, not just on those 50 people, but on their children, in many cases in the Philippines, their parents often live with them. So the impact that getting one person a job makes is crazy. Like if we achieve our goal of 10,000 in the next 5 years, it will transform like the city of Dumaguete. There's 500,000 people there. If creating jobs for 10,000 people will make a citywide impact on that particular region. So there's that aspect, and then we still do a lot of philanthropy stuff. There's a school in the provinces, in the mountains that we support. There's 250 kids in that school. So we do a bit of stuff for them. Honestly, it's pretty basic stuff. If they need computers or they need like school supplies, we just help out where we can. It's crazy how much, like, they don't get very much funding. So like a school of 250 students, the funding's like 500 Australian dollars a month, and there's 250 kids. So,
wow.
They don't even have money for paper and pencils and, because you've got to pay the teachers out of that as well. Like it's just...
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of an interesting segue to kind of a belief that I think would be shared, or a thought that would be shared pretty widely about outsourcing to the Philippines. I think nearly everyone will have heard a story of like exploitation of cheap labor, right?
Yeah.
There's that end of the scale. How do you position yourself within the Philippines, and what is the the value proposition for someone to be found by you guys rather than found by another outsourcing company?
I mean, like that does exist. There is agencies that pay their staff very little, and then they charge the staff out at 3 or 4 times the rate that they're paying the staff, and they're not adding very much value, to the client. And that's basically borderline slave labor. Like, you're making money off of someone without adding any value on top, and you're charging a huge premium for it. Like, there's something that's unethical about that. And that still happens, less so now, I think, from my experience and seeing other agencies over there, but it does still happen. But I mean, if you pay people well, pay people more than what they can get at other local companies, and then you provide a great working environment like what we are, then it's just a natural. We don't have to work very hard to get people to applying for jobs at WrkPod. You can imagine with our facilities, like the way I described them before, and the pay being competitive, that they can work daytime hours. They get to work directly with their clients, like with the bosses that are hiring them. So they're not, there's not this huge corporatized structure that is controlling them. They get to work directly with their employers. It's very attractive to the Filipinos, and so we don't have any problem attracting the talent. So I guess if you treat people well, then word spreads, I guess.
Yeah, and that goes back to, a core belief of mine is that if you do right by people, you will always win in a much larger way. It'll always work out better if you treat people well and you do what is right, rather than trying to exploit or take a shortcut for a financial gain. That's actually going to hurt you.
100%.
It's not going to be beneficial.
Yeah, it might pay off for that one time that you do it, financially, but it never pays off in the long run. Everything's built on relationship, and once you lose that relationship or you lose your reputation, then it's nearly impossible to get it back. So you've got to make sure you live the right way, and it pays itself back, 10 times over.
Yeah. Love that. All right. So WrkPod is awesome. We love WrkPod. Let's rewind all the way back to the start. It's crazy how many guests, it's going to feel like, I think listening to this, that Caleb just gets successful business people on here that he went to school with, which that's not everybody. But we were at Bendigo Senior together, right?
Yeah.
You were 1 year above me. That's one of my earliest memories of Kody Thompson. Actually, you told me off one time as a big Year 12 student, and I think I used a song in a short film, and you were like, "Have you licensed that?" And I was like, "Nope." And you're like, "You should license that." That's my only interaction with you that I remember. It was like,
doesn't sound like a positive one, to be honest.
No, I was like, I respected you, and you were really clever at media and stuff. And I was like, all right, I think I should look up to this guy. Anyway, that's pretty much one of the few memories I have from you in Bendigo. Let's how did you get started in business? I want to hear the Kody Thompson business journey.
Well, as you know, I was a youth pastor. That was my main occupation. When I finished school, I went straight back into. So when I finished Bendigo Senior that year after you were talking about, then during that year, I had a number of friends that committed suicide, unfortunately, and so I became a Christian when I was 16, and so I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to help young people not go down the path that some of my friends had taken. Which ultimately, led to, to us losing them. So I went straight back into working as a youth worker in a school. So I was volunteering at it's called Bendigo Southeast High School, but it was called Flora Hill at the time when I went there, and then when I was volunteering there. So I was doing leadership programs there. They would basically give me kids that were getting suspended, on the verge of getting expelled. Just kids that had really rough backgrounds, parents, in prison or that type of scenarios. I would take them I'd watch them play football on the weekends. I'd take them to the gym. I would just try to be there for them, try to help them stay in school. I was running like breakfast programs. We'd cook like thousands of pancakes for breakfast. There was about 1,000 kids go to that particular high school. So I was doing that while I was doing a degree in graphic design. And then the church that I was a part of saw kind of what I was doing. And they're like, man, we got to help fund this kid. Because I was doing it all volunteer. I was working at Cotton On or something, part-time job at the time. Yeah. Somewhere along there, I was working at a restaurant as well. And so then the church saw what I was doing. I was already the youth pastor of the church, but I was doing that volunteer. And then they were able to come up with 2 days a week to pay me. So I was studying, working 2 days a week, and then eventually 3 days a week. And I was the chaplain in the Christian school that was attached to our church, and then running like youth programs for the church. So that's what I was doing for like the 3 years that I was studying. And then I got promoted, I guess, at church. I became an associate pastor, and then I was what was called the national youth director. So there was 120 churches that were like a part of the group of churches that I was a part of. And my responsibility was to run like national youth events for all of the youth pastors to bring their young people to, but also I'd run events just for the youth pastors themselves to try to help them to develop their own leadership skills, develop their own, relationship with God and that type of thing. So that was kind of my, that was what I was kind of doing in the church. And then my wife and I took on a volunteer role on the Gold Coast. So we felt that it was the right thing, that it was sort of like a God decision for us to go to the Gold Coast and take on this new responsibility. But they had no money to pay me. And so I was like, it's all good. I knew that if I went there that I knew that I could grow the youth ministry, that just the number of young people that were coming to the church and stuff. And so I knew that there would be funding eventually. So I decided that I would go and that I would just use my skills in graphic design to make some money until the church could pay me. So that was like my plan, but that's like, that's not what happened.
Let's just say, pause there, right? So you've national director of the ACC movement for youth. Is that correct?
Not ACC. No. It was called the Apostolic Church Australia. So ACC is a different.
ACA.
Yeah,
Righto.
ACA. Yeah.
So righto. So you've gone from leading and helping to lead lots of youth pastors, lots of youth kids, events. I always say that like leading in youth ministry is like the best training for event management roles.
Totally.
Right. It's intense.
Yeah.
But then you've got all these leadership skills that you've been developing through your journey, and then you feel God tell you to go and volunteer at an unpaid position on the Gold Coast. Is that what happened?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's amazing.
They basically told me with that national youth role, they basically said, we want you to work in one of the churches that there is a national leader. So there was like a national leadership team, and there was like 6 or 7 pastors on that team. And so they're like, we need you at one of their churches so that you can be connected to the national leadership team. And so then we got job offers, from some of those churches that wanted us to go there and run their youth ministry. And all of them were paid. Most of them were 5-day a week with a car and a phone type job. Yeah. But then was one that was like, we got no money, but we'd love to have you.
Yes.
And I was like, not to get too religious on your listeners, but for me, it was just like, like if it's we just knew that it was a God thing. Like we have to take this unpaid job. And people told us we were like bonkers, like even people inside the church that were like, hey man, you're newly married. you can't just go there with no job. And we had like 3 or 4 grand in the bank, and that was like everything we had. And rent on the Gold Coast like $500 a week, so we had like 8 weeks worth of rent type deal. But we just knew that it was what we were supposed to do, so we just were like, we just did it.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
And it's talk about a step of faith, or taking the opposite of taking the path of least resistance. You were like, there's the options.
Yeah.
This one is the hardest. Let's go for that. I love that. All right. So, but you moved up there and you had the plan of working with some graphic design skills, but it didn't plan out that way?
Yeah. I planned on doing that just for 6 months until the church could pay me. But then what happened was I started doing graphic design and it just went nuts. Like within the first 12 months, like I think I did about $110,000 in the first 12 months, which for me was crazy money because I was making $30,000, $36,000 or something like that as a you don't pastor to make money. Like I was making no money. You just make enough to survive. So I went from like no clients to making about 110K in the first 12 months as a graphic designer. And then the next 12 months I did 250K. And then I was like, hang on a minute. This is like, I felt like this was, I was good at this and that this is what I was supposed to be doing. I did 500,000 the next year. And then the year after that, I was short of $1 million by like 8,000. I did like 992,000.
Surely you would have just been calling someone going, hey, look, I'm so close. You got 8 grand. I mean, we'll bill it. We'll do the work later. Just get me over the line. I pretty much
would have sold my body on the street at that point, Caleb. Like whatever it takes for that 8,000. But along that journey, I realized that, I guess God wanted me to do something else, and I was making an impact in a different way than what I had done as a youth pastor. But but it was just a new stage in my life, I guess.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing. So, how did that scale? Look, obviously, you didn't scale to almost $1 million as a solo graphic designer.
No.
What did that journey look like, and what do you think you drew on in terms of business skill to accelerate and double like nearly every year for like 4 years?
Yeah. So the first year was just me. And then to go from 110 to 250, I basically hired 2 staff in the Philippines that allowed me to, increase basically from year 1 to year 2, the only change was I make $80 plus an hour when I'm designing, and I make no money when I'm not designing. So everything that I do in my business where I'm not making money, I need to give it to somebody else. So that was basically the only major change I did from the year 1 to year 2. The staff that I hired were all juniors. So, the salaries in the Philippines are about 1/5 of the price or 1/6 of the price of what you'd pay for a staff member here in Australia. So my expenses to hire those 2 staff was fairly low, but I was able to then double my revenue. So that was that. And then I just doubled down on that. I probably got to 5 staff or something like that the next year. That got me to about 500,000. And then I realized that my business model sucked. So the business model at the time was Kody selling his talent for money, basically. So I was, selling marketing advice, graphic design, business automation, websites. First problem was I was selling too many things. So the more things that you have, the more systems that you need in your business, and the more systems you need in the business, the more inefficiencies there are. And so first problem was I was selling too many things. The second problem was that all of those things relied on my time and my talent. And so then I came up with the idea of selling websites on a subscription. So the way that I came up with that idea is I built a website for a CrossFit gym, and I was charging a lot of money for website builds. But then another CrossFit gym came to me and said, hey, we love the website you did for CrossFit ABC. Can can you build a website like that for me? And I quoted them like 10 grand, and they're like, we don't have $10,000. It's ridiculous. And and then they said, can't you just copy and paste the one that you built for them? We literally just want exactly what you did for them. And I said, oh, okay, well, I could do that for $500, or I think it was $300 actually, but you got to pay me $100 a month and I'll manage the website for you. And they were like, that sounds perfect.
Wow.
And so I think the next 12 months, I sold like 100 of those websites to CrossFit gyms.
Wow.
And that got me from the 500,000 to nearly $1 million. And then over the next, basically then I doubled down on that business model where I got rid of everything else. I stopped selling every other service, and all we did was build websites and manage them on a subscription. We got to about 750, 800 subscribers on that business. And then we got it to just under $3 million a year in revenue over the next sort of 6 years. And then I sold that company last year to a US tech company in August last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And exited. Come on. Well done.
Yeah.
So one thing I'm really interested in is the transition of Kody Thompson and his skill set from the delivery dude, like you are literally selling your skills, to growing a business that is its own machine, that's got its own product, that doesn't, well, I'm assuming didn't require your input as much or at all. Can you walk me through the transition that you had to go through as a part of your own business?
Yeah.
And what you were doing, how did you go from doer and delivery man to business leader and, entrepreneur growth business builder?
It just takes, it's a constant battle as your company grows to change your role. Like every person in the organization needs to be committed to change, because like if a business is growing that rapidly, your role as a leader is constantly changing. Like you're constantly trying to elevate yourself out of the day-to-day operations of the business. And so you start with the things that are eating up the most amount of time. So like if I go back all the way to right at the start when I was doing everything, it was like, okay, what is the stuff that is the biggest waste of my time that would help me to design? And then you get that off your plate, and then the business will then go and grow. And then you hit another ceiling because there's a whole bunch of stuff that you're doing that you should no longer be doing anymore. And the business won't grow until you stop doing that, because the business owners typically the business owner, if they're a visionary type business owner, they're the ones that bring in all of the revenue. And so what will happen is the business will get stagnant to the level of the visionary leader, and then you have to then elevate again. And so you'll go through this painful process of auditing all the things that you do, creating systems so that you can delegate it and get somebody else doing it, and then the business will grow again, and then you'll hit another ceiling, and you do that over and over and over again, basically.
Wow.
You're auditing your time for the things that you're currently doing, and then you're trying to build out a process or a system so that whatever your talent is or your genius is, you want to get it into a repeatable process so that it can be done by somebody else, and that but still get the same results as if you were doing it yourself.
Wow. Yeah, that is amazing. I love that. I love that linear analogy almost of, you do the same process over and over, but in different stages, and until you hit the ceiling and you need to work it again and go, how do we need to change this? I'm interested in a lot of change is a scary thing for a lot of people. And I'm fascinated by what you're saying when, your whole team has to be committed to change. What's your responsibility as the leader of a business in that scenario to, first, how do you attract people that that you can tell are up for the change? And how do you lay out the expectations so that when you do change, they're not like, oh, what are you doing? Everything's changing.
Yeah. It's a great question. I mean, I don't feel like you can always pick who you hire whether or not they will be able to go on the journey. Like, because to be honest, I don't know what two years away looks like. Like we have a plan to create those 10,000 jobs, and I know there's going to be loads of challenges, but I can't tell my staff what all those challenges are going to be. So I guess what I try to paint the picture for them is, like, if they work at WrkPod, they know they're attached to a rocket ship, like in terms of our growth. Because WrkPod's only like 2.5 years old, and it's doing around 3.5 mil a year now. So and it's only a few years old. So it's even the growth is much more rapid than even the web development business. So I guess the way we talk to our staff is that like if you want a comfortable job, WrkPod's probably not the place for you, because we want to get the best out of our staff. We want you to be able to reach your potential. And the only way for you to reach your potential is to be stretched beyond your comfort zone. So if you want a job where you stay in your comfort zone, then WrkPod is not going to be the place for you. But if you want to work in a company that's exciting, that will stretch you, that will help you to go to the next level in your own skills, in your own career, then that's what we want to be. That's what we want to do. And our vision is to transform lives. And so what we do every day is important, and it does change lives. And so if you want to be part of that environment, then that's why you'd work here. If that's not you, then this isn't going to be the best place for you. So that's kind of how we would communicate it. And then there's a balance as a leader, trying to stretch people to a point that it's uncomfortable, but not to a point that they break, basically. Because you've got to be so you try to support your staff so that they have a level of discomfort where they're growing, but not the level of discomfort where they feel like they're neglected or alone. Like, you have to be in the trenches with them, supporting them. And so I guess that's the way we talk about leadership, is like the leaders of our teams. You're there, rather than like an org chart where you're like, leading down on people. Like, my belief in leadership is like a biblical view, like a Bible-based view of leadership, which is like leaders are there to uphold and uplift. And so the leaders of the teams are there to support their people as their people are going through change and growth. You're there to coach and mentor and support them to grow, if that makes sense.
I love that. It's bringing so many analogies to mind. Like, one of them is like that the way you approach leadership, it is the foundation of a building, or like the trunk of a tree, right? So you've got fewer elements in a foundation than you do in the building itself, and one thing is the trunk kind of thing. But without that, most of what you see can't exist. It can't flourish. It can't thrive. One of those components is setting a vision, right? And like you described, the vision of WrkPod is to change lives. And you've got a very clear, easy way to describe how that works and how it looks. What would you say to, maybe a business that doesn't feel like they have that vision? Like, they're just there making money. Like, they don't know why there's no greater good, they would say, that they're there to exist, or there's no specific impact, and they think, well, I don't know all about this vision thing. Is that really required for a business?
I guess it depends on like what you're trying to build. Like, not everybody's trying to build a massive company, like, and that's okay. There's no, like, you don't have to build a $1 million business or something like that. Like, you can be just as, people can be just as happy building a business that supports them and maybe an apprentice or a couple of other people, or maybe even just have a business that is only them, and it gives them the freedom and flexibility that they want. And so I guess I don't like to be too prescriptive or assume that people want to kind of build what I'm building. And so I guess in that case, it can be, the vision might be something that sounds very small but might be important to you. You know, like if it might just be as simple as giving you, your business exists to give you the freedom to spend time with your family. If that's your why, and that's strong for you, then that's great. Like as long as you enjoy what you're doing, I think is the most important thing. Like I saw a show once. It was on Netflix. I think it's called Big Timber. It's like a timber milling show on Netflix. It's actually a really cool series. But there was this dude in that series who chops wood, firewood. So he gets the leftover junk from the timber mill and he chops it into firewood and he delivers it. And there's a part in that show, in one of the episodes, where he talks about he loves that he keeps families warm. That was like his vision. That was his that was his driving force. He was like, when I deliver wood, because they live in Canada or whatever, it was like freezing cold. He's like, when I deliver wood, this keeps families warm. Ooh, and that was like his driving force. And it was just him who worked in that business, taking the offcuts that he got for free from the timber mills, cutting it into pieces, putting it in his trailer and delivering it to people.
I love that.
But that was like, that gave him a meaningful life. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about, is you knowing the greater impact and taking a powerful position in what you do, and having a reason why, whether it is to align and unite a team around achieving something greater than themselves, or whether it's like that example, that gave me chills. Like I love that, that this guy, he's not his perspective on his work life is not that he's in this, dead end job and it's boring manual labor and that, he has to get out in the snow and the freezing cold and just chop wood and his life's going nowhere. He's got a vision for his life that is, I serve an incredibly important purpose to the people that I serve. I keep people warm. I love that.
Well, that's where, I mean, to be honest, I think you can only really fully achieve that a lot of the time. I believe it can only come with faith. Like having faith in God allows you to see even the small things in your life as being meaningful. Like even like, for example, there's YouTube videos of like guys who mow lawns, right? You would have seen these before, and then they mow someone's lawn for free. Have you ever seen these videos? And they get tens of millions of views. Some dude just mows someone's lawn for free and they come home and they bawl their eyes out or whatever. Yes. And that's like, it's like a small thing, but one act of kindness can change someone's future, And so for me, that's where my faith is important, that like even the small things that we do in life have like an eternal like impact. And that's where you can turn anything that you're doing, if you do it to serve God and to love others, it makes anything that you do meaningful. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It boosts up the value and importance of what you're doing like there's no tomorrow. That is so good. I want to move into like some challenges along the way. So what would you, looking backwards and even now, what would you say some specific examples of some real challenging circumstances or maybe like mistakes or things that you did, you're like, well, shouldn't have done that, and what did you learn from them?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest probably challenges is just like growing as a person, personally through each of the steps of the growth in the business. As I said earlier, like every time it gets to a ceiling, it was always my fault. You know what I mean? That the business stopped growing. It was always because there was stuff that I hadn't worked on in the business, or things that were bottlenecking when because of my time, my limited resource of time, or I hadn't structured something well or build a proper process for something. And so it kind of like, it's about being able to like stay motivated and focused when the pain is real. That's the hardest part. I mean, you know this, Caleb. You were talking before we jumped on about some of the challenges you've had in your business this year. It's the ability to get kicked in the nuts and to be in so much pain in the business and then keep getting up and doing it again. That's the part that is hard. And it's like I said, you're doing the same thing over and over again. Like you'll break through one ceiling and then there's just another one. You know, so you might get a few months of respite while the business grows, and then suddenly the business is hitting another ceiling, and you've got to do it all again. Yeah. I mean, probably the most painful thing along the way was, as a business grows, you just have situations where customers' expectations are not met, and then. You know, that's probably been the part that's been the hardest over the years. If you're scaling a business and you're no longer in control of every outcome. So we were building 30 websites a month in the web development company, and not every website project was a 5-star experience for the customer. And so sometimes they were a 1-star experience.
Wow.
And that sucks when you've got someone that you told them you could help, and then because the business is growing, because systems weren't dialed in, they don't have the best experience, and then you've got to deal with that upset client. And so that's the hardest thing, because you're trying to look, you just feel bad if you've promised someone something and it hasn't been delivered. And so they're the moments where if you get a few of those in a week or in a month or whatever, it can get you down, and you're like, man, what am I doing? This company sucks. We suck. And then you've got to like get up again in the morning the next day and then try to make it better. And that's, I think, probably the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. I'm interested in the transformation element. There's a fair few kind of beliefs floating around that people don't change who you are fundamentally. You can't change who you are. But then what you're talking about is a requirement for personal transformation and growth over a period of time to add new capabilities and work out problems and then become the type of leader that is required at the next stage. What's your philosophy on change, and how have you actually gone about adding skills, developing personal capability across this journey?
I mean, those thoughts of like people can't change, to me that's depressing. Like not thinking about other people, but just thinking about myself. There's been times in my life where I've been a crappy person, and I haven't been as good a person as I want to be. And the idea or thought that I can't change, that's just depressing. And I don't think it's true. I think it's a cop-out, that it's an excuse to not become the person that you have the capabilities of becoming. So my philosophy was people can change everything about themselves. Certainly, like when I became a Christian, for example, when I was 16, that was a complete value change in the type of person that I was to the type of person that I became. So that was like very deep-seated values inside me that changed. And then there's other things that you can change, like building a habit to go to the gym, or like basic behavioral changes. So I believe from your values all the way up to your behavioral changes, you can make those changes if you're willing to do the work. Then it's possible. So I mean, that would be, that's how I approach myself. I don't expect that of others. Like I don't hire someone in my company whose values don't align with mine and hope that I can change their values. I don't expect that change of others in a sense of like I can control changing them. But in terms of myself and what I can control, absolutely, I expect of myself that I can, I can do the work and make myself a better person.
Yep. And how have you gone about doing that? Like, what are some practical things that you've done in each stage of business growth and along the journey that you recognize something that needed to change, or you recognize maybe a flaw in how you are operating? How did you go about upskilling? Like, how did you go about changing?
So I had a business coach from a very early on. And so I think every business owner needs to get business mentoring. So I think that you can't grow something without having mentors that are going to, well, you can, but it'll take you a lot longer, I guess. I just feel like if you can learn from someone else's mistakes and get their wisdom along the way, you'll grow a lot faster. So there was that. And then, being open to my wife's criticisms of me personally, like that's a big one. If you're like, they see how you live every day. And, my wife's the type of person who will just tell you straight up if she thinks that you're not doing something the way you should. And like that can be really aggravating, if you let your ego get in the way. But if you listen, then you can learn a lot. So I try to have those types of relationships with my people that know me well, and people that I trust. So my pastor, my business coach, and then along the way I sold part of my business and had a business partner. So again, that relationship was useful because it helped me to focus on driving the financial results of the company and kept me accountable for the performance of the business. So I try to put myself in situations where there's good, smart people around me that have a voice into my life, but into how the company's being run. And then also your customers, that's a big one as well. Like I said before, not every customer experience is a 5-star one. So when it's a 1-star one, you got to listen to the customers and tell you why they had a bad experience, and then you use that information to try to make your business better. The faster you can listen to those customers and all those voices, the customers and the other voices I mentioned before, then the faster that you can develop the business to be better. I guess that's how I've, tried to do it.
I love that. You're talking about building a place and relationships around you where you can be vulnerable and open to criticism and to shaping. You've put in place a guide in the form of a coach and business mentor, pastors in terms of personal and spiritual growth. And I love the place that your wife has in your relationship, because
she'll tell you, man. She'll tell you straight up if you're being a dick, or if you're, she'll tell me straight up.
Yeah, and it is so important for anyone, but for us as men and husbands, to be open to that, right? That's not a given that you can receive criticism that is actually designed mostly to help you. And there is a lot of value to be brought and to be accepted with challenging feedback. Have you always been good at receiving feedback, or is that something you've had to work on? No,
I doubt it. It's something that I would say I'm not always good at even now. Like I think, depends. To be honest, I think for some reason, feedback's hardest to accept from the people that are closest to you. That's what I've found. Like if someone at work, like if one of my senior managers gave me some feedback that the way I spoke to someone was didn't land well, I'd be able to take that feedback easy. But if my wife gave me that same feedback, sometimes it's harder to hear it from the people that know you the best. So I think, I still don't think I'm probably like always great at that, but I try my best.
Yeah, that's so good, man. There's like a whole episode in just that one subject. But let's round this episode off with with your, I mean, you've shared a bunch of wisdom from your experience over your journey, but is there any other like key takeaways that you would share with another business person or another entrepreneur or even a manager within a business that you reckon have put you in good stead? Any key takeaways or tips?
I think probably the hardest thing that has contributed to the growth of the businesses that I've been a part of is just about being able to stay focused on the thing that you do really well, and then trying to make that product or service like exactly what your customers are looking for, and then saying no to everything else. And if I look at like people that had started companies at similar times to me that maybe had less financial success in their businesses, a lot of the time they would be changing stuff, like changing their service offering, changing their website, changing their this, their that, constantly changing stuff that doesn't matter. Or like offering new services or offering, a new marketing strategy. And it's like their world is constantly changing. I saw this even as a youth pastor when you talk to youth pastors about their youth ministry and they'd be like, oh, we're going to change everything up next term. Maybe that'll help us grow, and it's like none of that stuff will help you grow. Like consistency is what will help you grow, is like set it up right and then just do the work every day and don't get distracted by another opportunity or another product. I could make a little bit extra money if I went into this or if I went into that. Well, I can tell you from my experience, you'll make the most money and make the most financial success if you actually delete all the other stuff and just do the stuff that you enjoy doing the most and that makes you the most money. So talking from a financial success standpoint, if you want to grow a great business financially, find out where you make the most money and just do those products and services instead of, it's probably 20% of what you do makes you the most money, and the other 80% of stuff you just do because if you delete that 80% and just do 100% of your effort on the stuff that your customers really want and that makes you money, then you'll build a much bigger business. So I think that's probably the thing that I've seen help me the most, is that I was able just to do websites on a subscription, and I did it for like 7 or 8 years, and that's what allowed me to get the business to where it was.
Wow. That is absolute gold. And I'm sitting here thinking, you're literally talking to me like, don't get distracted. How hard is it to not get distracted as an entrepreneur who has 20 ideas a day? And you're like, this, that, everything else. It is a real struggle. But I love that advice and wisdom of it's often the boring thing, right? It's even, I even see it, I play table tennis, and I even see it in playing table tennis. When you find something that works against an opponent, for some reason, I feel like changing it up and doing something else. But it's like, no, if you find something that works, keep doing it. And yes, you'll get potentially bored. Yes, it's hard to do simple, repeatable, consistent tasks, but that's where the real work is and that's where the real reward is what I'm hearing you say, right?
Totally. I mean, I love basketball is my sport of choice, but there's examples of that in basketball games. You'll see them like if they're running like a specific type of set, a specific play, and it works, they just run down the floor and do it again. Sometimes they'll run the same play 5 times in a row, and the defense can't figure out how to solve it, and so they just keep running the same play. I love that. If you figure out something that works, just keep running the same play.
Yeah. And how much easier does that make it in marketing, from a marketing standpoint? That's the space I play in, and you're all over the marketing, how to market good businesses. Like clarity, the strength of a message is in its clarity, right? And how easy it is to understand and how clear the value proposition is. How much easier does the marketing become when you have only one, key thing that you're focusing on?
Yeah, exactly. And most of the time, business owners get bored of their marketing before their customers do. So that's what I see. So they'll particularly if you're selling a product that can be sold, like when I was selling websites to CrossFit gyms, there was 16,000 CrossFit gyms in the world. So, and I had 300 of them by the end. So there was still thousands of them left that I can market to. And so I could get sick of my, video ads and stuff that I had. But the reality is most of those people had never even heard of me before. And if I just send out the ads that I've got, if they worked in the past, they'll probably work still now, but you get bored of them. Like you've seen that video so many times that you're sick of it, but you forget that most of the customers have never even seen the video before or the other piece of marketing material. So people then waste a lot of money and effort recreating stuff when they could just keep running the same play.
Love that. That is an excellent piece of wisdom to round this out on. Kody, I've had so much fun catching up with you and hearing about your business journey. I have received so much wisdom and I've got lots of things to go away and think about.
Cool, man.
So thank you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
Appreciate you, bud.
Well, that's it for this episode. If you really enjoyed listening, why don't you drop a comment in the comments below? Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel so that you get updates on when all of the next ones come out. That really helps grow this little community of people that are diving into regional business and celebrating and learning more from it. So really appreciate your support, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.